So welcome back. Today we continue the repairs on my Porsche 964. In the last episode we resealed the camshaft covers and the chain housings. Now it's time for more oil, fuel and even more oil. Enjoy! Remember the AC compressor bracket? When I removed it last time there was oil running behind it. That's a clear sign of a leaking crankshaft seal. Let me show you how to change it. First, we remove the belts. Take off the large center nut on the alternator pulley and keep all the shims in the same order. For the fan belt, remove the 3 smaller nuts and slip the belt off. Now we need to support the full weight of the engine on sturdy boxes. Then I remove the engine blade by loosening the 4 nuts at the engine and the 2 at the engine mounts, and then the bracket from the AC. Now we move on to the crankshaft pulley. In order to loosen its center bolt, you need to hold the crankshaft. You either make your own holding tool or use the Porsche tool 9290 like I do here. Once the bolt is out, I use the Porsche tool 9285-1, the crankshaft pulley puller. You thread it into the hub and it pulls the pulley straight off the crank. This is much safer than prying on the pulley. With the pulley off you can see why we're here. Oil marks running down from the crankshaft seal. Removing the old seal is a bit tricky. Carefully pry it out with a small screwdriver or seal puller. And try not to scratch the crank or the housing. Installing the new seal is straightforward. Lightly oil on the seal, press it in square and tap it gently using a large socket so the pressure is evenly spread. Then I cleaned the crankshaft pulley. You can see the old pry marks from someone who tried to remove it the hard way. That can bend the pulley, but in my case it still runs true. When refitting, line up the small locating pin on the pulley with the matching hole in the crankshaft. Slide the pulley on, install the center bolt and torque it to spec again. Next I reinstall the AC compressor bracket with all its studs I pulled out earlier. With the engine blade in, the engine is securely mounted in the car again. Belts go back on in reverse order. Refit the shims as they were to set the belt tension correctly. Before we go hunting more oil leaks, let's take care of a fuel issue. We start with something simple that we need to do anyway, changing the fuel filter. Just undo the fuel lines on both ends of the filter. And be aware the filter is full of fuel, so have racks or a container ready. Recently the car started poorly after it sat for a few hours. I traced it to the fuel pressure dropping off while the car is parked. The fuel lines look dry, so a likely suspect is the check valve right after the fuel pump. If this valve fails, the pressure bleeds back into the tank and the next start takes longer because the system has to build up the fuel pressure again. Behind the small cover at the front right wheel sits the fuel pump. Everything is packed in tightly there. Remove the hose clamp and the bracket, then work the pump out. Changing the check valve is easy. Unscrew the old valve from the outlet side of the pump. It may be tight at first. Have the new valve and washers ready because the fuel will still flow out while the pump is open. Since we are talking about fuel, I want to be sure the system is completely dry and leak-free after we change the parts. To do that, I want the fuel pump running without the engine. You can either feed the pump 12 volts directly or bridge the DME relay. The DME relay sits in the fuse box in the front trunk on the passenger side. I pulled the relay and plugged in a harness which basically connects these three outlets. The DME relay normally powers the engine control unit and the fuel pump when you turn the key and start the engine. With the jumper in place, turning the ignition on makes the pump run continuously. You might hear my fan at the same time, but that's another story. Now I let the pump run and carefully check all the connections for leaks. Thankfully everything was dry, so I put everything back together. Let me show you where else I found oil. Unfortunately, there is something around the top of the famous Bermuda Triangle on the 964, the area around the crankcase breather on top of the engine. But it is also underneath the intake manifold. To reach this area, I removed the right side of the intake manifold. It's mostly hose clamps and a few bolts. After lifting the manifold, I found something I really didn't want to see. There is oil inside the intake manifold itself. That points to two possible causes. First, I could have overfilled the oil tank. This oil can then be pushed into the intake through the oil tank breather. The second but much worse possibility is excessive blow-by from worn piston rings. That would raise the crankcase pressure and push oil into the intake through the crankcase ventilation. But the breather hose itself looks quite dry, so I'm hoping this is simply an overfilled oil tank. To be sure, we'll do a compression test later, so I'm trying not to overthink this. But anyway, there's oil everywhere, so we need to disassemble further and clean everything. This part was not really fun for me because we need to loosen a lot of tubes and remember where everything goes. When the throttle body was finally out, you see it was leaking because the rubber seals were covered with something. I guess someone was here long before me. For now, I will clean out the intake manifolds and wait for the new rubber seals to arrive. Thanks for tuning in, hope you enjoyed it, see you in the next one.